You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
N2K has teamed up with AWS to bring you AWS in Orbit, a groundbreaking new series that explores the impact of space technology, cloud computing, and generative AI. Hi, I'm Maria Varmazes, and in this series, I speak with industry leaders to give you a nuanced understanding of how these technologies are revolutionizing sectors like sustainability, critical infrastructure, and cybersecurity. So if you're drawn to big ideas and are curious how space and cloud technologies are impacting life here on Earth, this series is for you. Follow the T- Space Daily podcast to catch every episode of AWS in Orbit and visit space.n2k.com/AWS to stay ahead of the curve.
From dozens of spreadsheets and screenshots to fragmented tools and manual security reviews, managing the requirements for modern compliance and security programs is increasingly challenging. Vanta is the leading trust management platform that helps you centralize your efforts to establish trust and enable growth across your organization. Over 6,000 companies partner with Vanta to automate compliance, strengthen security posture, streamline security reviews, and reduce third-party risk. CyberWire Daily listeners can get $1,000 off Vanta by going to vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber. Google boosts Maps privacy, a court shields password disclosure, feds foil a massive scam operation, Iran-Israel cyber tensions escalate, Idaho National Labs reports a significant data breach, a security engineer's cybercrime confession. N2K's Rick Howard reports from the recent MITRE ATT&CK Con, speaking with Blake Strom from Microsoft about 10 years of the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, and Brian Krebs' relentless investigation into the Target breach. It's Friday, December 15th, 2023. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Google is enhancing privacy protection for users' location data in its Maps timeline feature. Currently, timeline data is stored on both users' devices and Google's servers. However, Google plans to shift this, ensuring location history remains only on user-owned hardware. Additionally, the default storage duration for this data will be reduced from 18 months to 3 months. This move is part of Google's effort to secure location data against potential legal access, such as geofence warrants used by law enforcement. If users opt for cloud backup, their data will be encrypted, making it inaccessible even to Google. This update aims to protect sensitive information, especially in contexts like visits to medical facilities, which Google pledged to delete swiftly but has been inconsistent in doing so. Users have some existing control over their location histories, like the ability to enable or edit them. The upcoming changes also include a feature for managing activities related to sensitive locations, enhancing users' control over their data. Privacy advocates welcome these changes, though some remain cautious about Google's commitment to privacy. Google asserts its ongoing efforts to provide users with more control over their data, emphasizing their intentions to improve privacy measures continuously. These changes, expected to roll out over the next year, represent a significant step in enhancing user privacy in digital spaces. Federal prosecutors disrupted a major pig butchering scam, arresting 2 and indicting 4 Californians for laundering over $80 million from victims. This scam, named after a Chinese phrase, involves building rapport with victims through cold messaging, then tricking them into sending money to fake investment platforms. The scammers show falsified profits, persuading victims to invest in crypto or other assets before disappearing with the funds. The accused used shell companies and various banks, including Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase, to funnel profits to accounts in the U.S., Hong Kong, and the Bahamas, linked to money laundering and the Tether stablecoin. This case represents a significant enforcement action against a scam that costs U.S. citizens hundreds of millions annually. Shakib Ahmed, a 34-year-old senior security engineer, pleaded guilty to high-profile cybercrimes, including a $12 million theft from Nirvana Finance and another decentralized exchange. His admission reveals his use of sophisticated methods, exploiting vulnerabilities in smart contracts of Solana-based exchanges, including a $3.6 million attack on Nirvana Finance using a flash loan. Ahmed employed advanced laundering techniques involving token swap transactions, transfers across blockchain networks, conversions into Monero, and use of international exchanges and mixers. He faces serious consequences, including forfeiting $12.3 million and paying $5 million in restitution. Ahmed's conviction, a first involving a smart contract attack, is a significant legal milestone in addressing crimes in decentralized finance. Scheduled for sentencing on March 13th, he could face up to 5 years in prison. The Utah Supreme Court unanimously ruled that suspects have a Fifth Amendment right to refuse providing phone passcodes to police, a principle affirmed in the Alfonso Valdez case. Valdez, arrested for kidnapping and assault, didn't give his passcode during the investigation. The state's use of his refusal as trial evidence led to his conviction, which was later overturned on appeal. This ruling underscores the complexity of applying the Fifth Amendment in digital evidence cases, with potential implications for the U.S. Supreme Court. Legal experts note the current lower court confusion regarding digital evidence and the Fifth Amendment, suggesting this case might be reviewed by the U.S. Supreme Court for clarity. In the ongoing conflict involving Israel, Iranian cyber groups have intensified their operations. The group known as Oil Rig, also identified by various names such as APT-34, Lycium, Crambus, and Siamese Kitten, has been particularly active. According to ESET's analysis, since 2022, Oil Rig has launched a series of attacks against Israeli targets using 4 new downloaders: Sample Check 5000, OD Agent, Oil Check, and Oil Booster. These tools, while somewhat basic and detectable, have proven to be effective. One notable tactic in these attacks is the use of legitimate cloud services for command and control purposes. Oil Rig's primary focus is on cyber espionage, gathering information rather than engaging in theft or sabotage. Israeli law prohibits private companies from attacking international cyber systems, but according to the Jerusalem Post, one Israeli company, CyberAtt&CK, believes it's found a way to hit back at Israel's enemies in cyberspace without running afoul of the law. Engage international partners. The Jerusalem Post writes, their efforts target disinformation distribution, psychological warfare, and offensive cyber operations that fund terrorist organizations. The CyberAtt&CK organized operators are empowered to undertake targeted cyber counterattacks. By identifying and neutralizing hacker networks, economic losses from attacks can be mitigated. Closer to home, Idaho National Laboratory is notifying 45,000 individuals, including current and former employees, retirees, postdocs, graduate fellows, interns, as well as their dependents and spouses, of a data breach involving stolen personal information. The breach, identified on November 20th, affected the Oracle human capital management software used for HR applications. Compromised data includes names, birth dates, social security numbers, salary details, and banking information, all current as of June 1st, 2023. Those affected will receive a letter from Experian and INL offering no-cost identity protection and credit monitoring services. The hacktivist group SiegedSec claimed responsibility for the breach, with INL investigating alongside the DOE, FBI, and CISA. Impacted individuals are advised to be vigilant against identity theft and phishing attempts. Coming up after the break, our own Rick Howard speaks with Blake Strom from Microsoft about 10 years of the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Stay with us. It's that time of year to start thinking about your New Year's resolutions and what you're hoping to achieve next year. As you start setting those 2024 goals, professional certifications should be part of your plan. Starting today, N2K is offering our full catalog of certification practice tests for just $39 each. Choose from our extensive library of certification titles from leading vendors like AWS, CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, and more. With over 25 years of experience in exam preparation, N2K has helped hundreds of thousands of security students and professionals feel exam ready. Visit n2k.com/certify to view our practice tests and get started today. That's n2k.com/certify. And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, session cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific exposed data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation that fits seamlessly into existing incident response frameworks. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show.
And now, a word about our sponsor, the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. The JHU ISI is home to world-class, interdisciplinary experts dedicated to developing technologies to protect the world's vast online systems and infrastructure, and working closely with the U.S. government research agencies and industry partners. The Institute offers dual degree and joint programs in computer science and health informatics, and has been designated as a Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Research. Learn more at isi.jhu.edu.
Back in October, the MITRE Corporation hosted the ATT&CK Con 4.0 conference at their company headquarters in McLean, Virginia. And one of the coolest things they did on the 10th anniversary since they invented the MITRE ATT&CK Framework was to bring back the original researcher-analyst who came up with the idea in the first place. On the panel was Jen Miller-Osborne, who just recently stepped down as the Palo Alto Network's Deputy Intelligence Director for Unit 42, Brad Crawford, the Vice President of Product at Phylum, Eric Sheasley, the Head Global Security Architect at Sony, and Blake Strom, the Principal Security Researcher Manager at Microsoft. I got to sit down with Blake after the panel and started out by asking him if he thought the MITRE ATT&CK Framework was the de facto standard for how cyber threat intelligence teams convey and represent adversary playbook intelligence.
So we definitely had antibodies when it comes to standards and people calling it a standard. So we'll just call it a framework or a knowledge base. We're comfortable with that.
Why has everybody accepted that? You guys didn't think it was going to be that when it started. So how did it become to be that?
I think it's because it was just the right mix of threat intel, red teaming, and defense. And so I mentioned Todd Whitbolds in the panel. So he was the guy that hired me. He was my department head when I was at MITRE for a long time. But he had this saying about attack that it was like the rug that brought the room together. Sort of like, what's that movie?
Is it Lebowski?
Yeah, the Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah, so he said it's the rug that pulls the room together, or ties the room together. And that's definitely what it is.
Before attack, every vendor had their own way to describe things, right? And they could be talking about the same adversary and nobody would know, right? Because we even have colorful names that were different. And we still have that problem, right? But the attack framework becomes the Rosetta Stone to fix all that. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh, no, you're definitely right.
Yeah.
Because, if you read some of the reports, like the Intel reports back in the day, you could get two different reports from two different Intel providers or vendors, and they would describe the same even behavior in different ways. There was no way to compare them unless you really know the deep technical details and how the actor is actually performing the act. And so that's where the rubber hits the road for attack.
Well, take me back to those days, right? Because the panel was talking about, the origin story. I'm an old comic book nerd myself, right? So I love origin story. So what was happening before you started working on this that was the spark that said, hey, we should do this other thing? What was happening?
It was basically back to those cyber games reports. So what is the readout that the red team did?
Well, explain that. I don't know if everybody knows what that is. The cyber games was what?
Yeah, so the cyber games was basically the red versus blue session that would happen as part of the FMX project. So
for the NSA?
No, this is for MITRE. So
MITRE.
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit. So MITRE started this research project. The premise that, the IOCs that people were typically using to detect malware and attackers wasn't enough. You needed to instrument the endpoint systems, instrument the network in a way that you're collecting telemetry over time and then looking for the signal patterns that indicate an attack was happening. And so that's what the FMX project was. That set of sensors, the set of analytics, the analytic data getting into Splunk and then churning on it to see if you can find a threat.
It's a red team, blue team exercise?
Yeah, so we exercise.
Did we not have those before that? Or
we did, but it's usually the red team going in and assessing a network and the blue team going, hey, we caught you here, but we missed all this stuff. Don't tell us what we're bad at. Where this was much more supposed to be a collaborative exercise because the red and blue team both had the objective, improve the system.
So it's the origin of purple team.
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, it was.
Is it?
Yeah, it was very much a purple team.
How about that? I didn't know that till just now. That's really good. Okay. So
we didn't coin the term, but it was definitely a purple team exercise. And so trying to figure out what is the commonalities across the threat actors so that we can emulate them successfully in this environment in a way that the blue team can show that their work is actually making a difference against specific threats. Really was the origin for attack. That was the foundation.
So we have this, what was the games called again? Cyber games. So, all right, we do the games. We still don't have attack yet. So what changed?
So we had lots of data on how threats operate within an enterprise network. And Jen was going through that data and then comparing it, figuring out what the nuggets of details are that are specific techniques, comparing that to what Brad and Eric were doing. And then we realized, okay, so if we start with the ground level, what are the individual actions that attackers are going to take within a network? Let's start there. Let's start categorizing them. Let's start binning them into what is the purpose for that technique? Is it persistence? Is it lateral movement? Is it credential access? And that started to build the framework for the tactics that became part of attack.
Did all that just kind of trip off your tongue back then? Because before, I've been doing this for 30 years, right? No one started talking about sequences of activity until, the Lockheed Martin kill chain paper and the Department of Defense's Diamond model, the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, right? So were you guys thinking in those terms when the games are going on?
Yeah, we were. But if you look at the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, like the actions on objectives is very vague. And that's basically where attack sort of like fits in squarely to fill in a lot of
it like that. That is exactly right. I've always thought the kill chain paper from Lockheed Martin was more strategic idea with no details about how to do it operationally. But you are absolutely right that MITRE sits right in those actions on the objectives phase that they didn't address. I didn't know that. What about the diamond model? Was that part of it too? Or because the Lockheed Martin paper came out in 2010, diamond model came out in 2011, but both teams were working on it in the same, for 5 years, I guess.
Yeah. And I knew, like, I worked with some of the founders of the diamond model at the NSA when we were there together. And there's been like a lot of controversy that I think is totally unfounded in the industry. Like, what would you use, the diamond model or the attack framework or the cyber kill chain? But they're all necessary components to understand threats. And the diamond model is really good because it helps give analysts a framework to attribute a particular threat actor, which is important knowledge for some organizations like governments and sort of multinational companies to understand sort of like who they're doing business with and how that might impact their cybersecurity.
That was Blake Strom, the Principal Security Research Manager at Microsoft. You can hear more about how the three main papers, the Lockheed Martin kill chain paper, the DoD's Diamond model, and the MITRE ATT&CK Framework are really the intrusion kill chain defense triad in my book, Cybersecurity First Principles, and you can get your copy at Amazon. And you can hear the full interview I had with Blake in the next season of CSO Perspectives that will come out next year. Hey everybody, Rick here. Have I got a deal for you? On Tuesday, December 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be hosting the N2K Quarterly Analyst Call, which is normally reserved for our pro subscribers. But since it's the holidays, I've convinced the boss to open it up to the public. You're welcome. My guests will be my good friend Merritt Baer, the field CISO at Lacework, and Carolyn Wong, the Chief Strategy Officer at Cobalt.io. We picked the top 3 news stories from the past 90 days that will likely have the most impact to the InfoSec community in the near future, and then we will debate just why they are so important. It's going to be a blast. Register today by visiting the CyberWire, all one word, .com/analyst call, all one word. That's the CyberWire.com/analyst call. And I hope to see you there. And from the folks here in N2K, happy holidays.
And finally, in 2013, Krebs on Security reported on a major breach at U.S. retailer Target, where over 40 million customer payment cards were compromised. The malware used was linked to a cyber criminal using the handle Rescator. A decade later, Brian Krebs has unearthed new clues pointing to Rescator's real-life identity. Initially believed to be a Ukrainian hacker, further investigation linked Rescator to Pavel Vrublevsky, a convicted Russian cybercriminal. Rescator's tactics involve selling stolen cards from Target and Home Depot breaches exclusively on his online shops. Rescator's identity was further unraveled through connections to the Russian cybercrime forum Black SEO and a Russian ISP, where key figures in the cybercrime world were identified. One significant clue was an email address used by Rescator linked to a ChronoPay employee who managed pirated music sales. This led to connections with other Russian cybercrime figures and businesses involved in illicit activities, including cryptocurrency exchange Suex, sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury. Mikhail Mike Sheffel, a key figure at ChronoPay, emerged as a potential associate of Rescator. The investigation revealed intricate relationships among Russian cybercriminals, spanning various illegal enterprises. Vrublevsky's continued involvement in fraudulent activities post-imprisonment and Sheffel's ventures into cryptocurrency highlight the ongoing challenges in tracking and prosecuting cybercrime. The U.S. Secret Service remains interested in further information, emphasizing the ongoing nature of the investigation into this complex web of digital crime. Unmasking cybercriminals is like peeling an onion with infinite layers, but it looks like Brian Krebs doesn't mind the tears. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Be sure to check out a special edition of this week's Research Saturday. Threat Vector host David Moulton is bringing us an exclusive interview with Unit 42's Michael Sikorsky to discuss the Russian APT fighting Ursa. That's Research Saturday. Check it out. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin. Our mixer is Trey Hester with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producers are Jennifer Iben and Brandon Karp. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week.